Hello and welcome to my new video. This is Doom on the Sega Saturn, and no, don't adjust your TV sets or your computer monitors. It really does run at these frames per second. Yes, as some of you may know, Doom is my absolute all-time favourite game, especially first-person shooter game. I did a video response a while back to Chris Marder Games, and on there I put Doom in at number 1, and it's sort of been a goal of mine to try and play all of the retail versions of Doom that has been released. Now, I had heard some bad stories about the Sega Saturn version of Doom, and I think this is a game that may have spawned the idea that the Saturn really couldn't handle 3D particularly well. I mean, if you look here, there's not a great deal going on. It's pretty basic architecture. It's the first level of Doom, and I don't even know what frames per second this is running at, but it's very jerky. It's not especially smooth, and yeah, I mean, it's interesting that there are bad guys missing, I think it's fair to say, in some of the levels. There are quite a number of compromises. If you were going to compare this, for example, to the PlayStation version, which is a fair comparison because they are quite similar in regards to the level layouts and compromises that was made to the game, and certainly the sound. I mean, the real saving grace with Doom on the Saturn is that it uses the same fantastic atmospheric soundtrack that the PlayStation used. Now, what you will notice is there are no lighting effects at all. One of the advancements that the PlayStation version had over the PC version was the fact that they introduced some really nifty lighting effects. Obviously the PlayStation version had a lot other compromises, but they sort of counterbalanced one off against the other. So even though it had compromises in terms of the number of levels, the level layouts, and so on and so forth, there was a sort of carrot to oppose the stick, as it were, in that you actually got some rather nice lighting effects which weren't on the PC version at the time, and these aren't present at all on the Saturn version. There are some transparencies which you'll see in a minute, which again was something else the PlayStation version had, but you'll just see, I mean, that impact it had on the frame rate there just to do that was really notable. Now, the big question to ask, I suppose, is does this poor frame rate actually impact on the game? Well, yeah, it does. I mean, you know, any game which suffers a slower frame rate is always going to suffer in comparison with other versions of it. But I can't say that it makes the game unplayable. It makes it a little bit more tricky to play if you're used to, you know, the smoother frame rates of a PC version. But the PlayStation version was smoother and had a slightly higher frame rate, but it wasn't anywhere near as fast or as silky smooth as the PC version, or certainly the versions of Doom that you see on Xbox Live. So it's a bit of a tricky one. I mean, it is an inferior port. There's no two ways about it. Is it the worst? I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure about that. I still think the 32X was an exceptionally average conversion of Doom. I don't think there's ever been any really terrible conversion jobs. Some people might say, hey, the Saturn is a terrible conversion job, and fine, but I think perhaps why I'm not judging it as harshly is that I expected it to be a lot worse, given the things that I'd read about it and heard about it, I expected it to be considerably worse than it was. And although it is still suffers from a very poor frame rate, there are actually very few compromises. And if I'd had a Saturn at the time, I suppose the question I would have had to have asked is, would I have enjoyed playing this? And the answer would have been yes. You don't tend to notice what you're missing until you see other versions of it. And if I only owned a Sega Saturn and I wanted to play Doom, then this would very much have been a version that I would have been very happy with to play. One of the things that I did notice, and I'm hoping you might be able to see it on the video when it's uploaded to YouTube, is the heads-up display seems to be certainly a lot higher resolution than the PlayStation version. And again, that seems a little bit odd to me, considering the slowdown that's in the game. The heads-up, it does seem very crisp and clear. I'm not suggesting for a single moment it would have made any difference to the frame rates at all, but it was just kind of a surprising thing to note that, you know, it had this really weird area in which it was superior to the PlayStation version, and that was the fact that the heads-up display was very, very clear and crisp. I'm pretty sure Saturn owners would have rather have sacrificed a crisp and clear heads-up display and had a more unadulteratedly, fantastically faster version of Doom. But whether that would have been something that would have made a huge amount of difference or not, I don't know. I don't build games, I don't make games for a living, and therefore I've got no idea on what impacts on the frame rate to a significant degree as to whether it would have made any difference. But yeah, just trying to think of a way of summing this up, really. It is a good game, but it's not the best version of Doom that's out there. There are better versions of it, and if you were looking for the definitive version of Doom, then really you do have to look at the PC version, or better still, check out the version that's available on Xbox Live, because that is an awesome version of the game. If you own a Saturn and you want to check out Doom, then I don't see any reason why not to check it out. I don't think there's any real reason to think that it's a terrible game, because it certainly isn't. It just doesn't flow or work as well as other versions of it. But if you've only got a Saturn to play it on, then it doesn't really make any difference whatsoever. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I do love Doom, so, you know, I still think it's worth. I'd have been happy to check this out, even in a considerably worse state than this. I'm just trying to think now if I've got any more versions of Doom to play through. Possibly the Atari Jaguar. I'm not done videos for all of them. I've got the Nintendo. I've done the Nintendo 64. I've got the Super Nintendo one, which is, again, that does suffer from frame rates, but is a very good conversion. So yeah, I think there's one available on the Jaguar, and I haven't got one of those, so I might have to check that one out in time. But yeah, aside from that, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching.